Tonight, before you go to bed, your body may already be showing you whether the next 10 years will be steady or dangerous. Not with pain, not with a dramatic warning, but with one tiny loss of control most people ignore until it's too late. You can have decent blood pressure, normal lab work, even feel mostly fine, and still be much closer to a cardiovascular event than you think. Because one of the strongest warning signs of decline after 50 is not what shows up on a scan. It shows up in a few silent seconds your body either holds together or it doesn't. And once you see what those seconds reveal, you'll never look at aging the same way again. And the reason this matters becomes obvious the moment you stop looking at the symptom and start looking at the system underneath it. So let's start where almost everyone starts, the surface. The surface story is the one you already know. You feel a little more winded climbing the stairs than you used to. You notice your hands feel colder in the evenings, even when the house is warm. You stand up from the couch a little too quickly, and the room tilts for a half second before settling. Maybe your ankles puff a little by the end of the day. Maybe your sleep has become lighter, thinner, easier to break. These are the symptoms, the ones we talk about over coffee, the ones we mention to the doctor almost as an afterthought, right before we leave the exam room. And the response is almost always the same. That's just getting older. That's normal at your age. Let's keep an eye on it. But these aren't separate complaints. They're not random. They're the surface ripples of something much deeper happening inside the walls of your blood vessels. But here's what's really underneath that. Beneath those surface signs, there's a first hidden driver, and it has a name that most people over 50 have never heard, even though it determines almost everything about how their cardiovascular system ages. It's called endothelial function. The endothelium is a single-cell thin lining that coats the inside of every artery, every vein, every capillary in your body. If you laid it all out flat, it would cover roughly 6 tennis courts. 6 tennis courts of living, sensing, responding tissue, all working quietly inside you every second of your life. And this lining is not just plumbing, it's intelligent. It senses the blood rushing past it. It releases chemical signals. It tells your arteries when to relax, when to widen, when to allow more flow. It's the reason a healthy artery can expand to almost twice its diameter when your body needs more oxygen and shrink back down when it doesn't. When that lining is working, you have what cardiologists call vascular compliance. Soft, responsive, springy arteries that adapt in real time. When it stops working, the arteries stiffen. They lose their ability to listen. And from the outside, your blood pressure number might still look fine, because the cuff only measures pressure at a single moment, not how well your vessels respond between beats. That's the first hidden layer, and it's the one that quietly explains the cold hands, the dizziness when standing, the heavier breath on the stairs, the puffy ankles, the thinner sleep. All of them. They're not aging, they're signaling. But strip that back one more layer, and you find something even more important. Because the endothelium itself doesn't fail randomly. It's not just wear and tear. It's not just time. There is a specific biological process that erodes it, decade by decade, and almost nobody talks about it directly. It's the chronic, low-grade depletion of a single tiny molecule that your endothelial cells need to function. A molecule so small it lives for only a few seconds before disappearing. A molecule called nitric oxide. Now here's where it gets interesting. Nitric oxide is the chemical signal your endothelium releases when it senses healthy blood flow. It tells the muscle layer beneath it to relax. It tells the artery to soften and open. It tells your circulatory system, in essence, we're safe, let the blood through, let it deliver what the cells need. And when you produce enough of it, your arteries behave like they did in your 30s. When you don't, they behave like they're decades older than you are. Between the ages of about 40 and 70, nitric oxide production in most adults drops by roughly 50%, sometimes more. And almost nobody notices because the decline is silent. There's no test for it on a standard panel. There's no symptom that screams it. There's just a slow, creeping loss of the body's ability to soften its own pipes from the inside. That's the deeper layer, the one that almost nobody discusses at the kitchen table or the cardiology desk. And this is where the 7-second test comes in, because there is a way, a simple, free, in your own living room way to get a window into how well your vascular system is responding right now. It's not a perfect medical diagnostic. It's not a replacement for proper testing. But research has shown a striking pattern. People who can perform this small movement smoothly tend to have measurably better vascular function than people who can't. Here's what you do. You stand up, bare feet on the floor, somewhere safe, with a wall or a sturdy chair within arm's reach in case you need it. You lift one foot off the ground, just slightly, and you balance on the other. No grabbing, no leaning, just standing on one leg, and you count. If you can hold that position for less than 7 seconds, the body is telling you something. It's not telling you that you're broken. It's not telling you that you're doomed. It's telling you that the network of communication between your inner ear, your nervous system, your muscles, and crucially, your vascular system, the network that depends on rich, responsive blood flow and steady nitric oxide signaling, is not flowing the way it should. Researchers tracking middle-aged and older adults over years of follow-up have found that the inability to balance on one leg for around 10 seconds is associated with significantly higher risk of cardiovascular events and earlier mortality. Not because balance itself causes heart problems, but because balance is a downstream signal of dozens of internal systems all working together. And when those systems are quietly losing nitric oxide, losing endothelial responsiveness, losing vascular compliance, the balance starts to slip first, quietly, without warning. 7 seconds. That's the threshold where the warning becomes loud enough to take seriously. And here's what most people don't understand. This isn't a one-way road. The body is not on a fixed timeline of decline. The endothelium is not a clock that only counts down. It's a living tissue, and it responds, sometimes within weeks, to the right inputs. That brings us to what you can actually do about it. Because the question isn't whether you can stand on one leg today. The question is what you can do, starting this week, to restore the chemistry behind that test. And it begins with something almost embarrassingly simple. A pathway your body has used for millions of years, that the modern diet has slowly stripped away. Nitric oxide in your body comes from two main sources. The first is your endothelium itself, which manufactures it directly when blood flow is good and the lining is healthy. The second is your diet, through a fascinating two-step conversion that almost nobody learns about. You eat certain plants. Your saliva carries compounds from those plants. Bacteria living on the back of your tongue convert those compounds into a nitrogen-containing molecule. You swallow it. Your stomach acid transforms it again. And by the time it reaches your bloodstream, it has become a precursor that your tissues can convert directly into nitric oxide, on demand, where it's needed. This second pathway is your backup, your insurance policy. And after 50, when your endothelial production is declining, this backup pathway becomes more important than it has ever been in your life. The compound at the center of this pathway is called dietary nitrate, not the kind in processed meats. That's a completely different molecule with a completely different fate in the body. The kind we're talking about comes from leafy greens and root vegetables, and one source towers above the rest, both in concentration and in the body of research supporting it: beets. Specifically, the deep, dark, red beetroot, the kind your grandmother might have pickled, the kind people walk past in the produce aisle without a second thought. Studies on beetroot, both as whole vegetable and as concentrated juice, have shown measurable improvements in blood pressure, in arterial flexibility, in exercise tolerance, in endothelial response, and in the markers that track nitric oxide availability in the body. Some of these changes have been measured within hours of a single serving, some within days, some within a few weeks of consistent intake. But here's the part the supplement industry leaves out. The beets only do their work if the chain works. If you destroy the bacteria on your tongue with strong antibacterial mouthwashes, the conversion never happens. If your stomach acid is suppressed by certain long-term medications, the next step fails. If your diet is so processed and so devoid of plants that the conversion machinery has nothing to work on most days, no single dose of anything will rescue you. So this isn't about a single food. It's about a daily protocol. A small daily rhythm that rebuilds the chemistry. And once you understand it, it costs almost nothing and takes almost no time. It starts in the morning, before food, with one simple act: a large glass of water. Not because of hydration alone, but because overnight your blood is at its thickest, your vessels at their stiffest, and that first glass starts the day's flow. Drink it slowly. Sit with it. Let your body register that the day has begun. About 30 minutes later, you eat or drink the first nitrate-rich input of the day. For many people, this is the easiest single change to make. Some choose a small glass of beetroot juice, often diluted with water and a squeeze of lemon to soften the earthiness. Others prefer a whole food approach, a small serving of cooked beets added to a breakfast plate, or a green smoothie built around spinach, arugula, or kale, all of which are surprisingly rich in the same nitrate compounds. The research suggests that consistency matters more than the exact form. One serving a day, every day, for weeks, not a one-time experiment. And here's the crucial detail almost everyone misses. Do not, in the hour before or after this nitrate-rich meal, use antibacterial mouthwash. The bacteria on the back of your tongue are not the enemy. They are the conversion factory. Killing them with alcohol-based rinses interrupts the entire pathway. Many people who try beetroot and report no effect are quietly sabotaging themselves with their oral care routine, and they have no idea. Through the middle of the day, the goal is to keep the chain feeding. A handful of arugula on a sandwich, a side salad of mixed dark greens, a bowl of soup with extra leafy greens added at the end. These aren't dramatic dietary changes. They're small, repeated inputs. And the body responds to repetition far more than it responds to perfection. In the late afternoon, movement enters the picture. Not punishing exercise, not anything that intimidates a 60-year-old joint, just walking. A simple, sustained walk of 20 to 30 minutes, ideally outdoors, ideally at a pace where you can talk but not sing. This kind of walking does something specific to the endothelium that researchers find genuinely striking. The increased blood flow gently massages the inner lining of the arteries. That mechanical signal, the soft, rhythmic shear of healthy flow, directly stimulates the endothelium to produce more nitric oxide. You are literally training your arteries to listen again. In the evening, the protocol shifts toward calm, because nitric oxide is also exquisitely sensitive to chronic stress. The stress hormones that surge through the body in the late afternoon and evening, if left unchecked, suppress endothelial function over time. A simple wind-down practice, slow nasal breathing, 15 minutes of dim light before bed, a warm shower that ends slightly cool. These small acts lower the overnight stress load. And during the night, in deep sleep, the endothelium does most of its repair work, most of its regeneration, most of its quiet, invisible restoration. Which is why people who consistently sleep poorly tend to score worse on every test of vascular health, no matter what they eat. So the protocol is not exotic, it is not expensive, it is not a single magic pill. Water, greens, beets, walking, breathing, sleep. But here is what makes it powerful. Each of these inputs is supporting the same underlying chemistry. They are not 5 separate health tips. They are 5 inputs into a single integrated system: the nitric oxide system, the endothelial system, the vascular system, the silent network that determines whether you can stand on one leg for 7 seconds and whether you'll be doing the same thing in the same body 10 years from now. And there's something else worth saying, gently, because so much of what you hear about aging is delivered with a kind of resignation, as if everything is already written. As if the body's job is simply to wear down and ours is simply to manage the descent. That isn't what the research shows. That isn't what the endothelium does. The endothelial cells lining your arteries today are not the same cells that lined them 5 years ago. They turn over, they renew, they respond. The chemistry you feed them this month influences the chemistry of the cells that will replace them next month. Your 65-year-old body is not your 40-year-old body, but it is not a museum either. It is a living, responding, repairing organism that takes its cues from the inputs you give it. People who begin protocols like this in their 50s and 60s have, in many studies, shown measurable improvements in vascular markers within 12 weeks. 12 weeks, a single season. Some have reported being able to hold that one-leg balance test for 15, 20, even 30 seconds, when months earlier they could barely make it to 5. That is not a coincidence. That is a system coming back online. But before we close, there's one more thing worth being honest about. This protocol is supportive. It is not a replacement for working with your healthcare provider, especially if you take blood pressure medications, blood thinners, or have any diagnosed cardiovascular condition. Beetroot can lower blood pressure measurably, and if you're already on medication, that effect needs to be coordinated, not stacked blindly. Talk to your provider. Bring this conversation into the exam room. Most good clinicians will be genuinely interested. And the 7-second test itself, it's a signal, not a verdict. If you struggle today, it doesn't mean you failed. It means you have information you didn't have 10 minutes ago. And information, in the hands of someone willing to act on it, is one of the most powerful inputs a body can receive. If this video pulled back a curtain you didn't know was there, if it changed how you see that simple act of standing on one leg, or that quiet glass of red juice, or that 20-minute walk you've been meaning to take, leave a comment with the word awake. Just that one word. I read every single one, and it tells me which of these deeper conversations to bring you next. Because the truth is, the next 10 years of your life are not going to be decided in a doctor's office. They're going to be decided in 7-second moments, in one-leg moments, in one glass of water moments, in one walk after dinner moments, stacked, repeated, quietly, until the body remembers what it always knew how to do. Your arteries are listening. The only question left is what you'll teach them, starting tomorrow morning.